Shut up and sit down.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Fight for Liberty show. So tonight we have an extremely special guest. I'm super excited, kind of fangirling a little bit on the inside, but I'll try to keep it hidden. We have Carey Wedler here, the most awesome anarchist on YouTube. Carey, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. It's been an exciting couple of weeks. So
it has. And I just have to say, I just got the name of your podcast, Fight for Liberty. That's clever. I totally missed it. It took me sitting right here watching the intro and hearing you say it to get like, that's a play on words, and that's very clever. I like it. Good job.
Well, thank you. It was originally a campaign slogan and then turned it into a YouTube channel.
Nice.
So I like to start off by, but this is a little bit more of a loaded question, but I'm curious where was the first time that you heard the word anarchy used correctly?
Correctly.
Like where someone was actually explaining to you what actual anarchy is, not the horror stories we hear about it.
That's a good question. I've been down this anarchy road for a very long time. Used correct. I don't know that I ever even knew the wrong definition, honestly, because I was just so checked out. I was such a liberal, like the concept of anarchy never even registered with me. It wasn't a possibility, but I think it was just learning on my own. I know Murray Rothbard never used the word anarchy in Anatomy of the State, but I think that was the first writing I ever read that made it click for me, because I was already on the Ron Paul path, but reading Murray Rothbard definitely, it just like blew my world open. And he's definitely an anarchist. So he may not have used the word, but he definitely explained the underlying principles and reasoning of how you arrive at anarchism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely need to do some more reading.
Me too. I always do. We can always read more.
Right. I honestly, I used to be a huge reader, and then somewhere in high school, I just stopped.
Me too.
Like bullshit, all of my book reports. Like I didn't finish a single book from like age 15 to age 21. Yeah. And then I the first book I actually finished was Art of War, which is not very difficult to finish, right? But it was a nice actual read a last page of a book for the first time in 6 years, which launched me into I can read again.
Yeah.
I got through some more books and kind of fell back off. Now I'm more on the YouTube thing, so I'm watching you and Michael Malice and Dave Smith instead of reading Rothbard, which is arguably better.
Whatever resonates, man. Whatever makes sense to you, honestly, because we all have different voices. I've talked about this before on other podcasts. We all have different perspectives. And sorry, I'm fiddling with my hair. I'm going to be doing that the whole time. I'm going to try not to, but
you're fine. I do the same thing. I'm going to be fiddling with my microphone the whole time.
Okay, perfect. We'll be nice and twitchy.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody has a different way to articulate it, and the way I say it isn't going to resonate with everyone. That is evident in my comment sections. If my way were the only way, everybody who ever watched my videos would be an anarchist. But everyone has a different way of presenting it, and you never know what's going to resonate for every individual person. So that's why I love that there's so many of us.
Yeah, that's kind of the beauty of anarchy in general, isn't it?
Exactly.
I did a live stream last night on my other show with Reed Coverdale, who you know, and Magnus Panvidia, who's a Boog Boy anarchist,
nice.
And then my friend Stacia, who is a nude libertarian.
Okay.
So
wait,
we were
new or nude?
New, yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh God, I don't need a whole education.
I mean, maybe.
New. Okay, got
it. But that sounds like the more fun version of an anarchist commune,
right?
If we're going toward but yeah, so I got her into libertarianism, and then she's been listening to me and Reed kind of go down this anarchy hole for the last couple of months, and didn't see it as legitimate. So it was a 2.5 hour podcast yesterday, basically a 3-on-1 debate of is anarchy legit, and it was super fun, and really the crux of it all came down to we don't have the magic pill. Like anarchy isn't the magic pill. Like statists think that the government is a magic pill. We don't think that our thing is that. And that's kind of the beauty of the difference in my mind, is like we just accept the fact that the world's kind of fucked up and let's try to do it the best we can, and government's not that.
Right. Yeah. Something I love, Larkin Rose articulates this very well. I'm going to butcher his articulation of it, but he talks about how, hold on, I want to say this correctly because now I'm mixing up with another quote in my head, but it's the same meaning. But basically, like, anarchism is no guarantee that people are going to be good, that everyone's going to behave, we're all going to respect each other's rights. It's just a guarantee that there won't be a centralized institution that has the ability and the capacity and the tendency, if not invariable character trait of violence and disrespecting our rights, whatever it is. So whatever, insert government transgression here, you know, whatever it is, but it's just a guarantee that you're not centralizing that power.
So one thing I definitely wanted to ask about, because you went from Obama to Ron Paul, right?
I did, yes.
So because I feel like in at least the way that I talk to a lot of people, you know, Ron Paul is definitely the right side of libertarianism. Like I have a lot of friends that went like Obama to Sanders to Tulsi into the LP kind of a thing. Like that's a little bit more logical, like followable of a path. So where you kind of jumped all the way over and then back. How did that work out?
I like to go all in, you know, if I'm going to do something, I'm just going to go as extreme as possible. But I mean, at the time it was, I liked Obama because he was anti-war, or he had rhetoric that was against the Iraq war. Had I checked his record, I would have known he had paid to fund it. Yeah, he had that no vote on the initial invasion or whatever it was, but then he continued to fund it. So to me, that's not very principled. And so what appealed to me about Ron Paul was he was extremely an anti-imperialist at his core. And that was the first thing that drew me to him. And then being sucked in by that and appreciating he spoke truth to power. And at that time, I didn't even think about partisanship. I was just like, oh, I'm sick of Obama. You know, what a liar. So my love affair with I'd always had this belief, well, the Democrats are good, just inherently good. Leftists, good. People on the right, bad. Selfish, mean. You know, so hearing Ron Paul speak and just hearing his enthusiasm, and especially there's that clip, I know everyone's going to know what I'm talking about, where he called out just American foreign policy at a Republican debate in 2008, and Rudy Giuliani tried to get him to walk it back, and he wouldn't. I was just like, yes, somebody has principles. He's not afraid. He's not going to pander. And that it just inspired me so much, just to hear someone be so powerful with their words, to be so brave. And I've talked about this a lot. He's so positive. Like his focus is not how horrible the government is. It's how wonderful liberty and freedom are. And that to me was very invigorating, because I never supported Obama with any kind of system of principles. It was just, he said what I wanted to hear and what I thought constituted a good society or a good government or democracy. So Ron Paul was definitely the turning point for me. And then on top of that, it was seeing how the Republican Party and the media treated him. So after that, it was done. Like I wasn't going back to statism after that.
That definitely makes sense. I can definitely identify with that one, because I think I was already a libertarian. I've been a libertarian since 2016, but I did work on Tulsi's campaign, and that was definitely the black pill, for lack of a better word. That was just like, okay, this system is screwed. Like we can't elect freedom. It's just not very likely. I don't think I'm completely an anarchist yet, because there's still like this much hope that maybe we could, like, with just the right candidate and just the right amount,
just the right amount of theft and violence, right?
Yeah,
I can't wink. I'm not a good winker. Sorry, I had to say it. I had to put it in there.
So I think you touched on, I think, my favorite part of Ron Paul too, and you said it perfectly in your episode with Reed, the first one you did. He said that he loved liberty more than he hated the state, and that is that's something that we as libertarians could really use. You know, there's too many of us that hate the other team still more than we love liberty. You know, we're a right libertarian and we hate left libertarians, and vice versa. Makes no sense. Right.
And I don't want to discount the very legitimate frustration. Yeah, of course we hate the government. If you're not outraged at the nature of the state, then you're not paying attention, to quote the cliche saying. But yeah, I think it comes down to like, well, where are we directing our energy, and how much do you want to focus on how much you hate the state and people who support the state? Because I've spent a lot of time being angry about that, and it didn't change a thing. And it didn't feel very good for myself either to just be constantly like triggered and reactive. And that doesn't mean I don't have reactions to things I see on the internet, or, you know, or to status, or the things they want to enact, or the things they think they have the right to do. But it's definitely a positive reorientation to remember, like, okay, well, why do I hate the government? Oh, right, because they infringe on this wonderful natural human quality and the natural human state of being. Lowercase state, you know, I don't want to trigger anybody, but state, you know, our state of being is not government. Again, Larkin Rose, he says we're not meant to be like, what does he call them? Crap. Something along the lines of caged animals or livestock. We're not livestock. We're not meant to be farmed livestock and they extract our wealth, you know. It's we're meant to be free. We were born free. And that's just so much more exciting than constantly hating on the government. But I'm not one to talk because all I do is hate on the government. So I've started putting in solutions to my videos, you know, like
there you go.
So yeah.
Yeah, can definitely relate there. It's lots of ranting, not a lot of not a lot of like nice things to say about the current system.
Right, but people also, I want to like, there's value in that because people can feel so alone. I've been there. I can feel alone with this, and it is comforting sometimes to hear someone just go off, so you feel less alone, and to know like, oh my God, I'm not the only person who feels this way. So I'm not saying like don't rant, you know, don't let yourself feel frustrated, but just remember why we're doing this, because it's beautiful.
Amen to that. Yeah, I usually, when I'm in that mode, I go for like a nice George Carlin clip.
Yeah.
Like, I want to just hear somebody say things even smarter than I can say them, but everything that I already believe.
Exactly.
Perfect. If I want to get triggered, it's Jim Jeffries, because his gun stance annoys the shit out of me.
Oh, I don't even know who that is. I don't want to know.
Yeah, he's a Australian comic. So like most of what he said, like he's fairly libertarian, but because he grew up in a very anti-gun culture, like that's the one thing that he's not good on, in my opinion. But he has such great points on it. Like they're straw men for the most part, but they're funny. Like I actually enjoy watching him rant about how stupid Second Amendment advocates are, because it's still funny and he's actually making like decent points, and it's fun to like listen to people who do disagree with you that are saying it well and enjoyably.
Yeah, and you have to be able to laugh at yourself. Like the things that we care about are so serious and the stakes are so high. You have to, like, you can laugh at everybody else, but you have to have a sense of humor about yourself too, you know? Like I was just trying to film a video and I really want to get it done. And I tried to film it yesterday. I couldn't get it done. I tried to film today and I still messed it up. And it's like, I'm just like watching, I'm observing myself. Like I just film in my bedroom, my whole filming setup's in there, and I'm getting so frustrated. I'm like, my camera's not working. And you know, and it's like, oh my God, just, who cares, Carey? You're just in your bedroom. You're sweating. It's hot. Like, who cares? It's not, you know, your channel's shadow banned anyway. Nobody's going to see it. Who cares? If you're not having fun, like, and that's actually been a blessing in disguise, being shadow banned, because it's like, well, I'll just be myself then. I'm going to stop trying to, you know, who cares who sees it? I'm just going to say what I have to say. But no, I'm getting on a different tangent. But
I do want to ask what prompted you to start the YouTube channel, because that was something that took me quite a while to actually like pull the trigger on. I put out like 4 or 5 videos while I was running for office, and then just let the channel sit there for almost 9 months before I picked it back up and started like actually doing it legitimately. So what was that trigger moment for you?
It was Ron Paul. Although I will say, in a sense, it was almost public school, because I'm very shy. I'm very, like, I film alone. I get very nervous before public speaking, and we'd always have to do presentations in public school. So in middle school, I started asking my teachers if I could do video presentations instead. So I'm like, I'm gonna have a panic attack if I have to stand in front of the class. Like, it's against my will. I don't want to do this. I'm only doing it because I'll fail if I don't do it. And so I had a couple cool teachers who were like, yeah, that's fine, do a video. So, and it was so primitive. Like I had like a VHS tape, and I'd have like my recording tape, and I'd try to like splice. It was a long time ago. But that's actually how I learned I liked making videos. And then it was the Ron Paul 2000. Well, I started making videos in 2011 for the 2012 election. And it was just a matter of, I want to do something. I want to say something. I want people to know about Ron Paul. So I made a video so simple, like just me talking to the camera. And it was like my photo booth app. It wasn't even a real camera, no microphone. And a friend had encouraged me, the same friend who introduced me to Ron Paul and had spent like night after night just showing me Ron Paul videos. He was like, you should make a YouTube channel, make videos about Ron Paul. So I started doing that. And then kind of like you, I took a long break because he didn't win. And I was, I was mad. My team lost. I was really angry. I was disillusioned. And then maybe about a year went by actually. And then I was just watching and I was like, okay, well, Ron Paul didn't win. Things aren't changing. Maybe I should still say things. So that's how I started doing it more consistently.
Nice. Yeah, I definitely, I feel like I missed out because like Reed's been watching you for 7 years. I didn't find out about you until a couple months ago. Like I missed so many videos. I could have been
still there.
could have been. I've gone back and watched quite a few of them by now. But like, yeah, I could have been an anarchist this whole time instead of having to spend 6 years as a weak ass libertarian, you know?
Hey man, we all get there at different times. We all evolve. Something my mother told me that really still resonates to this day is we all learn different lessons at different times. Mm-hmm. You know, like just because I learned something at 16 doesn't mean somebody else is going to learn at 35. And maybe I'm going to learn something at 53 that somebody learned at 21, you know? Mm-hmm. As long as we get there, as long as we learn the lessons, you're here. Welcome. We're happy you're here. I'm going to speak for everybody right now in the entire collective anarchist movement. That's how it works.
Nice. We all of us, we went from individualism to collectivism real quick.
That's the answer.
Right. I did enjoy last night. We were talking about like all of the different like subsets, which honestly annoyed me a little bit because if you don't know much about like libertarian theory, like that video is going to confuse the shit out of you because like what's agorism, what's like, you know, there's just so many of these terms that are basically just anarchy, like but we had to like specify, well, these people have a solution for that problem, but these people have a solution for this other problem. And you know, if you want to live like this, you're one of these people, but if you change one tiny detail about that philosophy, now you're one of these people. It's like it's tiring.
Yeah, people, I mean, at the end of the day, it's still a very human desire to want to have groups and to label ourselves and identify with something. We have our team, you know, even within these little subsections, and that's okay as long as you don't force other people to participate and comply and believe what you believe. That's great. And I think it's great to have competing systems and competing ideologies. Obviously, the ideal is that none of them involve using violence to control people or to organize society, but how cool. I mean, I can't wait, hopefully, for there to be a time when there's all these different competing societies with different economic systems and people can choose where they want to live and we'll see what's the most effective. And I kind of have an idea of what's going to create the most prosperity. But if people want to go live in anarcho-communist regions, by all means, go for it. Have fun. Just leave me alone. I'm not going to participate and we're cool. That's it.
Right. Yeah. I definitely, the idea of like a million different groups of 350 people getting to come up with different ideas within this like within what is now this country is awesome. Like, could you imagine how many better things we would have done as the US if we had even just a dozen different like possible like groups of people instead of it all being centralized around this one thing. Like the idea that Alaska and Miami, Florida are in the same, like anything just will never make sense to me. Like no laws should apply to both Alaska and Florida other than like murder and rape. The basic ones.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and I mean, I think it's so arrogant, you know, the statist perspective of like, oh, well, our system is so wonderful and so grand and everyone's so represented that we can govern 300 and however many million people. The notion that anyone can successfully govern anyone else from a moral or practical standpoint is ridiculous. But I mean, oh my God, 300, like, I'm sorry, it's just funny to me. And I live in such a bubble, you know, anarchist Twitter and anarchist Instagram. I forget that there are people who've never stopped to question these things. And I think so much of the problem is we're constantly taught, and I'm a broken record about this in my videos because I think it's really important, but we're constantly taught that democracy is the end game. Like, that's it. We made it. There was this revolution a while ago, and you know, I'm not going to get into a Spooner tangent, but there's this revolution and now we're free and democracy is the way to go. And you're empowered, and like everything I've seen, especially election seasons, it's like, look at this wonderful, majestic system we have. You're so lucky to participate in it. Yeah. And there's never any there's no room for evolution past that. And of course we know there is, but the way it's presented to people is you're good, you're free, accept it. This is the way it works. Despite all of the evidence to the contrary, it's kind of like a gaslighting in its own way, but it's by people who believe it too. You know, I think so many of the people who push this propaganda are sincere about it. Like I was wondering that with all of the COVID stuff, because the journalism has, I want to call it journalism, the sensationalism has been so over the top. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, I'm sure there are editors who have an agenda and who want to push things and who are in cahoots with whatever government agency is currently manipulating the media, and all of them, whatever it is, you know, we don't need to get into like all of the history of that, but there's also just the reality that a lot of these journalists, they're just normies. They're also statists. They're terrified too. And they're writing these, oh my God, I don't have to go that into it, but I mean, the way they talk about it, like catastrophic, apocalyptic. And it's like, do you really believe that? And if so, are you okay? And also take a break from reporting, because this is not journalism. Like, you can't be that emotional when you're supposed to be reporting facts. But I'm not even sure how I got onto COVID reporting, but oh yeah, all these people genuinely believe it. Just like a lot of, you know, not every politician, not every voter, not every bureaucrat, not every media pundit, they're not like, yes, I'm going to brainwash the masses, you know, like they think they're doing something good. And some of them are intending to brainwash the masses. I don't want to downplay the fact that there are a lot of sociopaths who truly just desire power and control, but there's also a lot of people who are useful idiots. So,
well, they don't really have to brainwash us that much anymore,
right?
Because like the people that are intentionally doing the brainwashing don't need to do that anymore, because the people, the last 3 generations that they brainwashed successfully are doing it to us.
Exactly.
In the context that you're talking about, completely unknowingly.
Right.
Yeah, I definitely agree, especially with the COVID stuff, because there was so many people that, you know, are legitimately afraid of the idea of dying from what really does sound like one of the worst ways to die. Like the descriptions that I've heard of the people who actually do die of this, and like that's not fun. So like being terrified of that makes sense. And when you're not being told that it has a 99 point whatever survival rate, and that most people that catch it don't even get like any worse symptoms than the common cold, and like only like the 1% of the people that catch it even get these bad symptoms, and then like, and you know, it's like when you're not being told that, it's very difficult to rationalize what you're trying to think about and actually like come to a real conclusion. I mean, I was even like kind of okay with the lockdowns at the beginning. I was like, all right, the 2 week thing, if it takes 2 weeks for the symptoms to manifest, like that makes sense. Like everybody stay home for 2 weeks. I'm not a fan of like government enforcing it, obviously, but like a voluntary lockdown, kind of like how some of the states did it, where you're just highly encouraged to not go do stupid stuff, like go catch COVID. Like I was kind of okay with that at the beginning, and I saw where it could go wrong, but I was like, we can try it, because I legitimately naively thought that the 2 weeks was real. Like, I couldn't have fathomed that it would be 14 months later and we're still here.
Yeah. Well, I'm in California, so I've seen the worst of it. Although, to be fair, the enforcement has not been like, if they were it's not. The cops don't even want to. They don't want to waste their time on it. And I've walked past cops without a mask on in public at like a public place. Didn't say a word. So as much as the legislation and the audacity of somebody like Gavin Newsom is offensive and startling, fortunately, it hasn't been as enforced as it could have been. But that doesn't change the fact that it's been disastrous and it's really hurt people.
Yeah.
And the fact that I actually made a video about this, and I wrote a video about this. I didn't make the video because I felt mean. And in retrospect, I'm mad I didn't make it. I might still make it, but and it takes a lot for me to be like, I think this is too mean. You know, like, I don't really, whoa, Carey, like, let's brace ourselves here. But it was just about the fact that, and this isn't news. I'm sure everyone watching this knows, but just the rate of hospitalization and death, like the vast majority of people who endured that had pre-existing health conditions. And most of those pre-existing health conditions were lifestyle, like diabetes, obesity, COPD. What was the other one? Heart disease. And I was looking it up, and I was looking only at CDC websites. And I didn't want to put it out there because I was like, well, people are genuinely terrified. Whether or not I'm terrified, whether or not the terror is legitimate doesn't matter because they feel the way they feel. And I really try to be sensitive to people. And in that moment, I was just like, you know what? I can't do this in a tone that is going to reach the people I want it to reach, so I didn't make it. But with the vaccine passports, I might make it. Well, I actually don't know if that's going to happen. Let's hope that it doesn't happen. But even just moving forward with going back to normal and all the things that they're going to be calling for and mandating and expecting us to comply with, I might have to make that video again, because the whole point is, I'm sorry, why am I responsible for your lifestyle choices? And you're not responsible for your own health? Like, I have to sacrifice my freedoms because you made horrible decisions for your health, and now it's on the rest of us. And I think that that's actually that's a through line in common American thought now, is you're responsible for me. And it goes through both sides, but obviously liberals have really excelled this past year. But I'm tired of being gaslit. God, like, leave me alone. I don't go cough on people. I just take my dog for hikes, and even people on hikes, like, they're just out there with their masks on. And it's like, I'm sorry you're scared. Thankfully, no one has said a word to me this entire time. I got a dirty look once, but I was talking to someone else just the other day who I hadn't seen in a while. And he was like, oh my God, I get it every day. Like, every single day, some liberal woman is calling me like a QAnon Trump supporter. He didn't say that exactly, but he did say the QAnon Trump supporter thing. He said some woman called him that, at least on one occasion. And why? Because he wasn't wearing a mask outside in nature. So the only possible conclusion to draw is he's a Trump supporter who believes in QAnon, obviously. So he's obviously selfish.
Yeah, because he has an opinion and is doing a thing that literally like 65 to 70% of the country agrees with. He must be part of just 1% of like conspiracy nut jobs.
Yeah, that's the rationality for you.
Oh yeah. I did not have a great 2020. As far as like the states that I was in, I spent the majority of my time in either New York, Michigan, or California.
Ouch, you picked all the worst states to go.
Oh yeah. So I'm from New York, but which one was the worst? That's a tough question, actually, because I was in upstate New York for the majority of that time. So that was, although we still have Cuomo and he's still a tyrant, the people around here don't really believe in it necessarily. And so, and my county went like 80-something% Trump. So it's there's definitely plenty of, everybody's got their mask like here at Walmart, which that one honestly annoys me, because like, if you're gonna put a mask on, at least wear it right. Like, that's just stupid. Dumb.
Like, don't half-ass it. Either do it or don't do it. There's no try,
Right. Okay, Yoda.
Yeah, exactly. He's right though.
He is. Yoda's always right.
He's always right.
Be real.
It's true.
But yeah, so New York actually wasn't as bad as it could have been. Michigan was also not nearly as bad as I was expecting. I was out there in July and August, and I wasn't wearing a mask knocking doors. So that was kind of cool, because knocking doors in the summer in a mask is not fun.
Yeah, God.
We had to have like one on us and like put it on if somebody asked us to.
Yeah.
And like we have to have it like visible so that they knew that we had it.
Right.
Or, like around our neck or whatever. So, but that's what happens when you work for Republicans and you're knocking on Republican doors, because I was working on a primary, so I'm only knocking Republican doors. These people don't give a shit.
Yeah.
So that was great. I did get to spend some time in Georgia and South Carolina, and those two were both great. Like, I was in South Carolina in late August when stuff started to get worse again, and a lot of the states started to go back to their tyranny. And South Carolina, like, there were signs up on businesses that said that they would refuse service if you had a mask on.
Nice. Love it.
Yeah, that was fun. Like, I also don't agree with that, but it's a nice level of like pushback, because I'm still fairly undecided on the mask thing. I really just don't. There's no legitimate way to know. Like, I don't trust anyone that is putting out information about this, because
same.
Everyone that's saying that they don't work is super right wing. Everyone saying that they do work is super left wing. There is no
Exactly.
one in the middle saying, well, they work sometimes.
Yeah, right. Really.
Like they work for if you're within. That's the other thing that I always thought. Like the masks were supposed to be if you're not social distancing, right? Like it
I've
that was
lost track,
it was the
honestly.
6 feet or a mask originally, and now
right.
it's both and 2 masks
And a vaccine.
and a vaccine all on top of each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
no,
if you
thank
don't, you hate grandma. So
Yes.
those are your choices.
Yes. I mean, that's accurate anyways. So I've been going down this anarchy rabbit hole, as I like to call it. And I actually will throw up our first comment from the video was Reed telling you to turn me into a full anarchist.
I'm on it. I'll get it done.
So my biggest question still, as far as theory, is along like foreign relations. Like how do we actually work with other countries on it? And I definitely think that I know that there is an obviously more logical answer than what we have right now. I just can't really think of it. So like how do we work with other countries, either through trade or like defense and all of these other ways that we have to work with other countries, if we break it down into like 100 different tiny little anarchist areas?
Well, exactly what you said, trade, right? So there's the great Bastiat quote is, if goods don't cross borders, armies will. And that ultimately, any government prohibition on trade ultimately creates tension, and it's going to create places where people don't have what they need, which ultimately increases the drive to war. So like look at Iran, where the US government has sanctioned the government. Sorry, let me fit my air quotes in there. But really, who does that affect? That affects poor people. That affects people who need medicine. It affects the real people. And what does that actually do? That's going to push them to want to elect someone more hardline, who's going to actually fight back against the government, which is that just came to mind. But that's the power of trade. That's the power of resources. And to do it voluntarily is obviously highly preferable. But I think if we're talking theoretically, hypothetical situation, there's 100 anarchist communities in America. By that point, there's going to be anarchist, I don't want to say communes, but anarchist communities elsewhere too. If we've gotten to a point where there's 100 anarchist communities in America, there's going to be other ones elsewhere. But I think ultimately it's a matter of, and I'm always beating a dead horse with this, and it may not be like the all-encompassing answer you're looking for, but it's why I do what I do, is we have to change the mindset. You have to change the mentality of this belief in authority of like, oh, well, the world can't run unless we have this centralized group of men and women and, whatever. Planning it. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just, the fear thing is definitely real. And even for like people that I didn't think were still super susceptible to that. Like my dad raised me to be almost a libertarian as it is. Like I was raised to hoard guns and ammo and not pay my taxes if I could. And I was taught to respect like the government and the police and the military, but to try to interact with them as little as humanly possible.
Right.
But I was talking to my dad the other day about, because I went on a rant on my show a little while ago about how we should stop paying income tax, just like as a community. Like we need to stop funding this bullshit. And so I was talking to him afterwards or the next day, and I swear to God, his first thing was roads. Who would plow the roads?
Right.
And I'm like, are you kidding? Do you not have a plow attached to your fucking truck? Like, go plow the roads. Like, there really is that like that trigger for a lot of people that like, if we get rid of this thing that's keeping me safe, what could happen?
Right. Well, and I think that's the effectiveness of the propaganda and all the programming too, is people have been conditioned to believe that government has this like magical monopoly on knowledge, really. And it's actually the opposite. Like the more you centralize, the less knowledge you have, because you're not sourcing all of the people and all of the wisdom you could be. But I remember making the roads argument years and years and years ago to my Dutch cousin, who was trying to tell me, like, she was showing me the first zeitgeist, and I was so young, and I sat there and it was like bothering me. I was like, wait a minute. And I was a liberal. I was still an Obama liberal. And I vividly remember thinking like, oh, I got it. I'm going to shred her roads. Like, who's going to build the roads? And we make fun of it, but it's also very sad because it's like, well, who builds the roads when they're working for government? It's people. And they're maintained so poorly. And there's actually, I want to credit Larkin Rose's wife. Her name's Amanda Rose, because I was on a phone call with them, and she was talking about something so simple as like, it could literally just be blockchain technology, where every time you drive on a certain road, you scan your QR code and it starts mining the currency to fund it. Like, and that's just like a very random idea, but that's one person who understands blockchain who just threw an idea like that out there. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, I don't want to forget to say this because I've been wanting to say it, but I won't forget. I don't want to go on a tangent, but that really is just the fact that people can't fathom a world where we don't violently coerce each other for good things, And I understand, and it's easy to be frustrated, but it's also very helpful to just, when you hear that rhetoric, to just remember like, oh, they're a victim of the state. I believe that once too, like, because it's so easy. Oh my God, it's so easy to get frustrated and be like, how is your mind so wound up around? But the best we can do is show them other options. People will build the roads. And I love showing, like, it's so simple. There's this anarchist in, there's different anarchist road or pothole filling projects. There's one, I think, in Indiana. They have them up in Oregon, I think, where anarchists just go through and they'll repair the roads. But there was another guy who's somewhere in Canada. People were giving him weed to fill potholes. Like, why not? Freedom of exchange, just make a trade and it's done. But
I would fill potholes for weed.
Yeah, right? Who wouldn't? But I think it says so much that you see all these instances where somebody fixes like a staircase, a wooden staircase, because the government didn't do it. Like 5 years pass, they don't listen. Somebody fixes it and they're like, nope, we got to tear it down. You built that for $500. Sorry, we need to spend $144,000 giving the money to contractors because only we know how to build a staircase. But it's like they don't even care about getting the job done. It's about the control. And again, I'm not saying every single person who works for the government has that mindset where they're like, I have power. No, they really think they're helping fix the roads and they really think they're keeping people safe, But again, it just shows the limitations of this paradigm and this ideology. It's just, you can't even imagine someone else doing that. Like, people build roads. They could build roads otherwise. We have private security guards in place of cops in some places. Is that really so hard to fathom on a broader scale?
Yeah, I think
it shouldn't be.
Right. It shouldn't be.
Right.
For me, one of the people in history that I actually look to as a little bit of a white pill on this, I fucking hate using the pill terminology, and I started doing it, and I hate it. I watch too much Michael Malice now, and it's a problem. But honestly, and he's one of like all of libertarians' least favorite people in American history. But Alexander Hamilton was basically a monarchist, right? Even after, like, post-revolution, he wanted to create some weird hyper or like combination of what we have and monarchy. And like now we look back at him and be like, what the you fucking moron? Like, what do you mean we need a monarch? Like, why would we need a monarch? At the time, no one had done what we were doing. Like, it was a revolutionary idea that there wasn't somebody that was in charge for life.
Right.
The fact that leadership would change. There's actually a great line in the musical Hamilton from King George. He said when Washington steps down, they say Washington's yielding his power and stepping away. Is that true? I wasn't aware that was something someone could do.
Right.
So for Hamilton, like, he really, like, he was a revolutionary. Like, he obviously didn't like the British monarchy. Like, he was like very pro freedom and pro liberty, and like, helped us beat the British for a reason. He was just a little bit misguided from just centuries of indoctrination that monarchy was the only way. And we proved it wrong because enough people around him told him to shut the fuck up. But so I think it's a similar thing now. Like, at the moment, we're still in like 1750 something, right?
Right.
Where there's a couple of people that have the right idea, but it's going to take a long time of like showing people that this isn't necessary, that democracy isn't the end game, because they used to think monarchy was the end game. That was better than the tribalism bullshit that we had for the first couple million years.
Exactly.
So
yeah, and I don't want to like, because obviously I criticize the Constitution a lot because Lysander Spooner is one of my favorite anarchist philosophers, but I can also recognize how at the time it was very revolutionary. And it tried to embody a lot of the principles of anarchism. Not that they were consciously trying to be anarchists, but just the idea of decentralizing power and not giving absolute control and absolute trust and faith to the government. I mean, that was huge and very revolutionary. And even though they failed, the goal of the Constitution was to restrain government. And I can, it was all very misguided at the time. However, it was still revolutionary. And I don't want to discount that because, I mean, look at Ron Paul. He's used the Constitution as an avenue to promote libertarianism for decades. And it works, because obviously, I don't even think I'm not going to speak for Ron Paul. I think he's a little bit past constitutionalism at this point. But I mean, and actually, no, he just tweeted about how the Constitution failed, which is like a very Spooner sentiment. But yeah, again, important stepping stone in human history, just not the final destination.
Right. I'm of the opinion that there isn't a final destination.
Totally.
I'm completely okay with knowing that in another 1,000 years, people are going to be calling anarchists moronic assholes that didn't understand what they were talking about because they figured out something better by then. Right. But until we get there, like this is the best we got.
Yeah, and it's happening. I think that's something that's like really important to remember because it can be so heavy. It can be so depressing. We have to take time to care for ourselves. We have to check out, but it's just important to remember it's already happening. Like if anybody wants to feel inspired, there's a wonderful speech by Larkin Rose. I'm a big Larkin Rose fan. And I think it's Anarchapulco.
Really? I couldn't tell.
I hate him. No, I think it's a 2016 video. It's called So Small a Thing. If you like Lord of the Rings, it has a bunch of Lord of the Rings analogies. But the part I'm talking about is he, and I've mentioned this in other interviews because I wish everybody could see it. I think at the beginning of the talk, he asked people, like, how many of you were anarchists 20 years ago? And this isn't an anarchist festival, okay? And like a few hands go up. He's like, what about 15 years ago? More hands go up. What about 10 years ago? Way more hands go up. What about 5 years ago? Almost the whole room. So we just got to see this demonstration in the room of how exponential the spread of this belief system and this understanding really is. And the technology is already coming up to help build parallel systems that are going to make government obsolete, make people realize how inefficient and what a failure it is. So yes, we are watching the state right now like a trapped animal lashing out and trying, doing its best to maintain control, to save itself. And I think that's so much of the desperation is they know they're losing the grip, especially with 4 years of Trump, which is not to say that Trump was anti-establishment or anything whatsoever, but it was just a reflection of people's lack of faith in the system. And I don't see that changing. I don't think that all of a sudden all the people who the past year have been like, maybe this isn't the best way to do it, or all of a sudden going to be like, you know what, Joe Biden made me realize we need more government, like that's not the way it's going. And I know that there's a very big demographic in this country that wants more government and wants more socialism. I still don't think it's going to happen. I mean, they're going to try, and they may crash the economy and then blame capitalists. But again, even if that happens, the long-term trend, especially if that happens, honestly, is more people realizing that centralized power is not the way to go. It's not moral, nor is it effective.
Yeah, there's really only one surefire way to convince somebody that socialism is bad, and that's make them live in socialism.
Yeah, right.
Like I've never met anyone. Like I actually have quite a lot of Russian friends. I don't know any of them that are like, socialism was cool.
Yeah.
Like it worked all right.
Right.
Like, had some issues, but the basic idea was okay.
Right.
We as Americans will say dumb shit like that of like, yeah, I mean, we've only murdered 10 million people as a country. Like, that's not too bad. We only killed half of our own country at one point in time. And, but it's not that bad. Like we had the Constitution the whole time, so it was cool.
Right.
Yeah, one of the really good points that Reed made last night was that government doesn't solve these problems; it just puts them off 1 degree.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it seems like the state is what's keeping violence under control,
Right.
but it's propaganda that's keeping violence away from your eyes.
Right.
There's still plenty of fucking violence.
Exactly.
Like, Magnus brought up that they were literally dropping flashbangs out of helicopters in Louisville last week. Like, that's a thing that was happening. There's been multiple gunfights at these riots. There's riots in almost every city, almost every day for a year now.
Yeah.
We're not hearing about any of this. We're not hearing about how violent those are. And I definitely didn't know that there were guns fired at some of these protests. Like, I did not realize that there was actually firefights with the police going on at some of these riots.
I didn't
We
know
don't
that
hear
either.
that. Right.
Yeah.
They're keeping that pretty well hidden from us.
Right.
And so they're doing their job. So we can sit here and think, well, we're safe and everything's good because we don't have violence within our borders. But we do.
Right. And I think that's actually one of the biggest, one of the best techniques for manipulation within the media and within political speak is just lies by omission. Oh, we're just not going to tell them that little bit. We're just going to leave that part out. And then it creates a completely different narrative and people have no idea. And it's not as glaring because there's not an overt lie in there. They just don't have all the information that would make it would paint a very different picture. So for example, like you talking about them not showing the violence you're not talking about, it reminds me of Vietnam. Like that's when they learned, oh, actually we probably shouldn't show Americans what's actually going on in overseas in countries that we quote unquote are bombing, because that helps spur anti-war sentiment. When people saw the flag draped coffins, when they saw the violence, when they saw what it was actually like over there, they stopped supporting the war. And so the media learned, I think personally, this is just my take and stuff I've read more actually from leftist writers over the years, because they, in general, if we're talking about status, people on the left tend to at least give more lip service to being anti-war, unless they're proper conservatives. You know, you have to be like a really principled leftist or rightist to actually be anti-war, either progressive or like a really, proper constitutional conservative. But it definitely, I think it they learned a big lesson from that, where they like, oh wait, we shouldn't show them the actual violence because then they might actually want something different. And the same applies to what's happening with what you're talking about. And it's just, it's interesting because it's like this constant duality of like, everything's out of control, we need government, but also trust us, government's in control. Like, it's like a very like what a way to exist, Right. I feel for the people who subscribe to those conflicting beliefs, because I think that's a lot of people.
Yeah, I being our age, we didn't get to see this, but it's really weird to look back and see like the actual like war footage that was just being played on TV during like World War I and World War II.
Yeah.
Into what we have now, where Chelsea Manning and Julian Assange are sitting in jail cells being tortured right now for showing us just one clip of the war.
Right.
Which I actually finally watched for the first time yesterday and was horrified. Like, holy fuck.
It was. There's a reason they went so far to punish him. It did not reflect well on the empire.
No.
No.
Yeah. I find it very like kismet that Reuters released an article today, almost on the exact 11-year anniversary of this, like just shitting on the what's the new vaccine, not the Pfizer, Moderna, the other one, the AstraZeneca. Yeah, I was like, I wonder if that's connected at all. It's like, let's just kneecap the American government because we're still mad at them for killing our reporters.
Yes.
Like, which is a fair complaint to have. Like, we killed one of the best war photographers in existence just in cold blood.
Well, we didn't do it. The government did.
Right.
Just to clarify. I will not accept responsibility for murdering journalists just because I was born within a certain geographical location. But yeah, but what's interesting too is, speaking, as long as we're talking about Reuters, when I used to have a news organization, we were called the Anti-Media, and Standing Rock was happening. There was a lot of police brutality, and I was still checking mainstream reporting on it. And actually, it was interesting because they refused to cover it until independent media had covered it for months and months and months and actually forced the issue, because we actually used to have so much reach on social media that people, like, it had an effect between It was like the Free Thought Project, the Anti-Media, the Mind Unleashed, Police the Police. It was a bunch of pages like that. That we weren't insignificant, you know, and we pushed the Standing Rock narrative, if that's what you want to call it, of just like, why isn't the media paying attention to this? We pushed that for months and months. And then when they did start covering it, Reuters specifically, I remember reading an article from them, and they had noted that police were doing blockades and they were keeping supplies from going in and out. I remember it was like an evening, I was working on this article. The next morning I went back to check it. It was gone. They deleted it from the article and did not include an editor's note. It was just freaking gone. And you can check the Internet Archive of like, you know, like Wayback Machine, and you look and you can see different versions. And I verified it. Like they straight up just deleted that inconvenient fact and never even reported it. And then they will grandstand on how important journalism is, you know, and credibility. And of course they're not the worst offenders, but I'll never forget that, you know? And that wasn't even like, I know there's like a disagreement about Standing Rock. I have libertarians telling me I'm wrong when I say Standing Rock was a debacle, you know, in a show of police state. But we don't have to get into a whole debate. I have an opinion on it, but I'm not going to do a tangent of why I think it's legitimate to talk about it. But point being, lies by omission, man. All they did was delete that, and all of a sudden the cops don't seem so bad anymore, and you have no understanding of what's really happening on the ground.
Yeah, no one's actually out here reporting on the bad, like the really bad shit. Yeah. So for me, I think one of the keys to propaganda, like correctly doing the propaganda, is only reporting on unsolvable problems.
Right.
So they can't tell us about these things that we could actually fix, like by either voting somebody out or, you know, like like going and helping people, like just donating food to a food bank or something like that to fix the problem. They don't report on, you know, just the hunger problem or, you know, some of these other like actually solvable problems. They report on culture war issues and foreign governments doing crazy shit and other things that only the government could solve.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
or,
and it's
in their mind.
Well, and the solution is always more government, right? Like the solution to COVID wasn't, hey, like take care of your health and stop eating so many processed foods and get the weight off because you might get hospitalized, because people who are obese have a much higher chance of being hospitalized and dying. It was no, stay home, stock up on all this crap food the FDA approved. Make sure you have all the macaroni and cheese and cheese balls or whatever. I don't know what people eat. Make sure you have all the, you know, go rush the grocery store, buy everything that's made you sick in the first place. And trust your government. You know, like just nothing. And like you said, you know, things that can be solved through community action. That's never really a highlighted solution. And you can find stories on it. Like you'll see a story here about mutual aid groups getting popular. You know, you'll see a story covered about how police shut down feeding the homeless. But on average, I'd say I don't think the average person is aware, one, of how much government contributes to these problems, and two, that there are other ways to solve them. Because again, we're always taught this is the only way. We need legislation. And even like I've done a whole video on solutions, you know, and it was in response to people telling me all I do is complain. So I was like, okay, I'm going to make a video that's just things I think would help to change the world. And sure enough, you get all this data. It's like, no, not that way. That's not the way. You have to give me my solution. And it's like, well, then why are you asking me? Like, what? If you want a government solution, why are you asking an anarchist and getting mad at me because I don't think that you should vote? Like, what? I don't. But that's how confused people are. Is like they're so stuck in the ideology. They'll go to someone who's made it very clear for years and years and years and years and years and years and years that they don't think government is the solution, and then they demand a government solution. But it's like, I don't think you understand who you're asking. You don't even understand your own ideology, let alone the one that you're trying to debunk of mine. But I am heartened because there are so many solutions. And one of my favorites, actually, I mean, it's not the biggest, like broadest scale, but there's a wonderful group in Texas, I think, called We Will Not Comply. And they do armed feeding the homeless. Like they show up with their guns and nobody bothers them. The cops don't shut them down. Nice. How wonderful. Yeah, they've been doing it for a while. I think you can find it on Ford Fisher's channel. He's like an on-the-street journalist, News 2 Share with the number 2. Yeah, Ford's awesome. But he covered that, or one of his affiliates covered it. And it's also just people strapped, like doling out food. It's so peaceful.
Have you been following what Dan Berman is doing down there in Texas right now?
No, but I do. The name sounds familiar.
Yeah, so Dan Taxation is Theft Berman has
that's
been,
how I know it.
yeah. You got to put the middle name in there. So he is in Texas right now. So he's back and forth between Texas and Mexico, and he is smuggling insulin into Texas and selling it at cost for $12 a vial in Texas, which is illegal. So he's got Boog Boys doing armed security while he's doing these sales in Bitcoin.
Love it.
Yeah, just fuck it. Like, there's nothing better going on right now in my circle, at least, than him doing that. Like, I just freaking loved hearing about that because it is solving like 6 different problems at once.
Yeah, exactly.
And in a way where he literally needs armed security to keep him safe while he's saving lives because someone would try to kill him for it. Like, that's the world we live in right now, and it's ridiculous.
Right, and that's so much of like what you were saying, Reed said about 1 degree. What did he say? They only shift the problem 1 degree or something, or push it back. And that's so much of like, okay, well, why don't we look at the government's role in why insulin is so expensive? But it comes down, it's kind of like Western medicine in a way. Like, I'm very into like Eastern philosophy and whatnot. I love acupuncture, but it's this idea of like, we have to treat the symptoms. And they never identify the cause. So they just keep putting Band-Aids on all of these symptoms of too big government. And then they're like, oh, we just need more government. Like, that's like literally saying like, oh, the cancer didn't go away. We need more cancer. Like, what? We just got to inject you with some more tumor cells. What? No, like, just get rid of it and let my body do the rest. And I think that's so important, is if you get rid of this institution that grossly mismanages resources, does so through theft, has a record of killing people more so than anyone could ever be killed in it, like by individual homicide. I think that like maybe we should just leave it to humanity, and I know that that's very upsetting to some people to think about that, but I don't know, they've had a very long time to get it right. For example, like just in California, because I'm working on a video about California right now. I hope people like it. It's about gun control in California, but it's this notion. But it's this notion that like, hold on, the Democrats have had a super majority in this state for decades now. They might have had a little patch where it was just a majority and not a super majority. If it were going to be a progressive government, socialist utopia, it would have happened by now. They wouldn't have one of the highest poverty rates in the country. They wouldn't still have mass shootings. They would have affordable housing. If all of these policies of pro-government, big government, whatever, if they all were effective, we would see it. It would have manifested by now, but it's not happening. So it's like, why don't we look at the track record, whether of Democrats, whether of Republicans, whether of democracies, whether of democratic socialism, communism, whatever, they all have the same track records. And yes, some are worse than others, but at the end of the day, they all still, it's a net loss when you look at all of their policies versus maybe some of the good they've done, which is hard to justify anyway, because it's all done through theft and coercion.
Yeah. And the ones that do make it look the best are always tiny homogenous countries.
Yeah.
Like,
totally.
like Denmark is a good example of like, their government's really not actually that bad, right? Like comparatively to the rest of the world, like they don't even have a federal minimum wage. Like they're pretty chill. They're like 80-something% white. Not to be racist, like you have to be all white to have a good society, because I know somebody in the comments is going to pretend that that's what I just said. But it's homogenous. Like, people are the same. They're all in the same area. They grew up in the same culture. Like I said earlier, like the fact that Miami and Juneau are in the same system just makes literally no sense. So yeah, we can look at those track records and see. Even look at the good ones. If you want to tell me like, oh, well, these countries are doing these good things. Okay, yeah, because there are good things that have come from states. Look at which states did that and what's the common denominator. Super decentralized, super small, weak federalized governments, very homogenous, very small. Like,
yeah, and they still have markets. They haven't shunned markets. And in fact, I don't want to say with absolute certainty because I can't think of the Scandinavian country exactly, but you can read about it at fee.org, the Foundation for Economic Education. They've covered this a lot, but in a lot of cases, or at least there was a period of time, I think in the 70s or 80s, where some of these countries, if not just one, I'm sorry, I can't remember the exact details, but basically they had all these socialist policies and they had to like reintroduce capitalism because they didn't have enough it wasn't producing the wealth they needed to have the socialist policies. So they had to come back more to free market. So I don't know if the lack of minimum wage is sort of a reflection of that or if that developed on its own, but they needed the markets. And look at China, they had to open up. And now like they're an odd combination of communism and markets, but they couldn't sustain themselves without having capitalism or engaging in capitalism or trade. Let's just say trade. They had to do it. And it's just so interesting because people point to those countries as like, this is proof that we need a socialist country. And it's like, well, you can make the case that with prosperity, you want to spend the money that isn't yours in a certain way, but you can't make the case that you could do it without capitalism.
So I have one more question for you.
Okay.
If Ron Paul ran for president again, would you climb back out of the rabbit hole and vote for him?
That's a tough question. It's a good question. I really want to say yes. I'd have to think about it. I'm actually thinking it because there's going to be a recall on Newsom, and I'm like, should I vote? Like, I really don't want to, but like,
I feel like if there's one vote that you can, as an anarchist, like with fully good conscience, vote on, it's the just to remove someone.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not putting anyone in, you're just removing him. So that's definitely something you can vote on.
I could do that because basically there's like a should he be recalled question and who do you want to replace him with question, but I could just do the should he be recalled question.
Yep.
You guys, I'm gonna vote.
I mean, of course, I would love for you to vote for Jeff Hewitt on the Libertarian line, but you know, I'm to each his own.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to vote to recall. But that's the other thing is, you know, I make a lot of videos making fun of voting and calling out the futility and immorality of it. But there are cases where I understand, you know, like if you can remove a horrible prosecutor, if you can get a new judge in who's going to be softer on drug crimes, I understand. I'm not going to like, I think there's maybe the line can get blurry of what's actually limiting government and what's might actually be, you know, just voting for somebody who's not going to live up to the promises, blah, blah. But as far as like policy and positions, especially at the local level, I understand. I'm trying to not see the world as so black and white anymore because it's a tough way to see the world, you know, as much as I believe the philosophy is right, it doesn't create for a lot of satisfaction if everything is like either it's right or it's wrong. And if you're not with me or against me, like, oh, what a miserable way to live. I'm trying to just see people as whole people. And I don't have to let them violate my rights. I don't have to agree with the policies. I don't have to just lay over and let them steamroll me. But it's a lot more peaceful for me to not like I could use my energy for something so much more productive than being mad at status, you know? Like, and again, I still get mad, believe me. But it's
I've never seen it. You're so calm and peaceful and centered in all of your YouTube videos.
Well, you know what's funny is that's so not how I am in real life. Like, but it's a part of me. It's certainly like a very authentic part of me. But like how I'm talking to you now is really more my nature. And there's a time and a place for everything. So sometimes you just got to get riled up on YouTube. You know, call people out.
That was like the first thing that Reed and I talked about after you guys recorded that episode. Cause I think he called me like fairly shortly after that about something else. And we were talking about it. And he was like, I thought she was going to be like that on the podcast too. Like, I didn't realize she was such a like chill, like awesome, just like genuine person. I was expecting like that fight. Like he was like a little bit intimidated, and instead you're like just awesome instead.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I can't really. It's funny. I can't do the whole like sassy tough girl thing face to face with someone. You know, like no. And you agree with me already, but even you know in real life with status, like I'll get sassy, but it's not the same, you know, because it's like, oh wait, there's an actual human here. I'm making eye contact with them, you know, and it's to each their own. I'm not going to say that we should be taking a certain tone, and I'm the last one to talk because I can still be such a little bitch in my videos, you know, like I'm not. Sometimes you got to go off. But it's been an interesting journey for me to navigate, like cultivating my own inner peace, and also then how I relate to the outside world with how I articulate ideas about peace, but I also do it in a very inflammatory way. So I haven't figured it out. It's still a mystery to me. It's still, you know, rattling around, and I'm trying to figure out the way that feels best to me, but it definitely feels good not to be angry all the time.
Yeah. Aggressive peacefulness is a fun little conundrum. It's like, I want peace. Just give me peace.
Exactly. It's not very believable. But for some reason, it works on my videos. I don't know. And it's funny because when I try to be calmer, I'm just like, ugh, boring. Who's this girl? I don't want to watch this. Like when I try to slow it down, I try to be calmer. It's just, I don't know, not my nature. If I'm gonna, like I said, if I'm gonna go for something, I'm gonna do it extreme.
Yeah, I'm definitely the style. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a big fan of just the style that is your YouTube channel. Those are kind of what I watch the most of, is like the shorter, just like getting fired up and yelling at a camera kind of stuff. I actually don't watch much stuff like what I do. I watch Malice and Rogan every once in a while, and I'll obviously I watch Reed's stuff when he has somebody cool on, but I don't really watch like interview style podcasts almost at all. It's the YouTube channels like yours. That's my shit. I love that.
Oh, I'm glad you like it. I won't stop. I take long breaks, but I always come back. So I'm coming back very soon. I'm about to come out of my cocoon.
Nice. Well, I'm very excited to see what comes out of that. But so before we wrap up, I want to give you a chance to pitch that channel a little bit more. Tell people like where to find you, how to get involved, how to help you out, and if you need any help in anything, like.
Cool. Thank you. I'm on YouTube. You can just search my name, Carey Wedler, CareywedD as in dog, LER, Carey Wedler. I'm on YouTube. I'm very shadow banned on YouTube from what I can gather. But I also put the content on Facebook. It's on Instagram. I'm on Minds. I'm on MeWe. I'm on Hive, I think it's called. I'm on Flote, FLOTE.app. They are members of our community, the people who started that website. So you should sign up and support them. It's very free speech oriented, no algorithms. Let's see. Any information on how to further connect with me is in my... they're in my YouTube video descriptions because Facebook started like blocking my videos for putting external links in them. So I can't put all my external links there. But yeah, you can find me there. And if you're looking for solutions, I just want to recommend really quickly Derek Bros and John Vibes of the Conscious Resistance. I don't think they identify as anarcho-capitalists, but they're definitely anarchists and they're definitely agorists. And they've written a lot on community-based solutions, decentralization, agorism in general. So check them out. I think it's the Conscious Resistance. It's either .com or .org, but I just want to plug them because they're very positive. Yeah. Speaking of gentler communication, they're very good at that. Like they don't go off as much as someone like me. But that's why I love them. They're very relatable and very authentic. So check them out if you're looking for inspiration and solutions. And that's it.
All right. Well, thank you very, very much. This was wonderful.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, and guys, thank you so much for watching. It's been a blast. If you don't already subscribe to the channel, the button's over yonder. I point in the wrong direction. Like we were talking before we started, the inverted video thing fucks me up. I point in the wrong direction every time.
I'm never going to get it right.
Nope. But so yeah, subscribe in one of those directions. The like is in the opposite direction. And we'll catch you back here next time.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.